When she looked me in the eye and said, "What really happened in Orchard?" I stopped breathing. For the first time in 50 years. I wasn't supposed to talk about it. Not to my wife. Not to my priest. And definitely not to some journalist in her 30s with a voice recorder and a legal pad full of pointed questions. But something in her tone, or maybe the silence after she asked, broke whatever dam I'd built inside myself. Amelia Clark, New York Times, freelance. Big brown eyes. Smelled like peppermint gum and pressure. She said she was doing a retrospective on forgotten operations of the Vietnam War. I thought she'd ask about troop movements, MREs. Maybe it's instead she pulled out a black and white photo. Bird out village. Women screaming, smoke curling like fingers into a gray sky, and one word, written in the corner in faded red ink, Orchard. I tried to get up. My cane slipped. My ribs flared. Even after all these years. They still complain when I move too fast. She reached to help me, but I waved her off. Where'd you get that photo? Does it matter? Yes. She didn't answer, just looked at me like she already knew. I sat down. You want the real story? Not the one they wrote up in some air-conditioned tent 1,000 miles away. She nodded. Hit record. So I told her. Or started to. We weren't saints. We weren't monsters either. We were 19 and 20-year-olds with guns, dehydration, and orders we didn't understand. They told us Orchard was a hot spot. Said VC were blending into the village. That the only way to weed them out was to make the roots bleed. That was the phrase. Make the roots bleed. We dropped in by Huey. Morning haze. I remember because the sun was caught behind a low fog like it was trying to hide. Maybe it was. There were kids in that village. Real small ones. I saw one with a red balloon. God knows where she got it. Might have been from one of us a week before. We used to trade chocolate for smiles. Then someone fired. To this day. I don't know who shot first. Might have been one of ours. Might have been reflex. Might have been fear. But after the first shot, everything blurred. I remember fire, screaming, the sound of boots, crunching wet thatch. A woman threw a cooking pot at me. I didn't shoot. I didn't. But I did light the flare. That's what eats at me. Not the fire. Not the bodies. The flare. Because that was the signal. The go-ahead. I lit it. I started the wave. And when we walked out hours later, covered in ash and silence that patted our backs and said we saved lives. I didn't sleep for 6 years. The official report says there were weapons caches in the village. That we encountered resistance. That we returned fire proportionally. That's a goddamn lie. Amelia didn't interrupt once. She let the silence hang after I finished. Like she was giving the ghost room to speak. Why now? She finally asked. I didn't look at her. Just stared at the corner of that old photo. Because I thought I buried that day in the jungle. But every night, it still digs itself out. I reached into my drawer. Pulled out something I hadn't touched in 20 years. A second photo. Same. Village. Same day. But this time, a little girl. Alive. Looking right at the camera. She survived. And she's the reason I'm finally ready to talk. They dropped us in just before dawn. Under cover of fog and the promise that we'd be ghost. No names. No patches. No trail. Just a unit that never officially existed. Operating in a region the Pentagon claimed was abandoned. I remember the sound the trees made that morning, like breathing. Like something alive was waiting. There were 12 of us moving through the jungle in a loose staggered column. Lieutenant Macklin led, radio man Coyle behind him. Then me. I was third because I had the rifle with the undersling launcher. And they liked having firepower close to the front. Macklin didn't say much. But when he looked back at me, I saw it in his eyes. Fear. Not the fear of dying but of remembering. We reached the edge of the orchard around 0500. It wasn't an orchard in the American sense, just rows of trees someone had planted long ago. Papaya, banana, some wild citrus. The village was past it, nestled in a hollow beside the river. 10 huts, maybe 12. Clay and bamboo. The kind of place that didn't show up on maps, but somehow made it into the CIA's red folder. They said VC were using it to store weapons. That the people were feeding them, harboring snipers, but I didn't see any guns. I saw children, old women. A boy no older than my nephew crouched beside a goat, staring at me like I was the ghost. Macklin gave the signal. Clear it. Fast? Coyle hesitated. Sir? I don't see do it. We fan out. I kicked open a hut door and found a family huddled inside. No weapons. Just rice bowls and the smell of smoke. Get out. I yelled in Vietnamese. Go. But they didn't run. They just looked at me. An old man raised his hands. Not in defiance, just tired acceptance. Then I heard it. A scream, gunfire, then more. I ran outside. Lance Corporal Hitchens was dragging a teenage boy by the collar. The kid was bleeding. Macklin shouted something I didn't catch. And then. The orchard lit up. Flames. Someone had torched the trees. Maybe Hitchens. Maybe Jones. I don't know. But the smoke rose like a signal, and the jungle answered. Gunfire from the tree line. Real this time. I hit the dirt, dragged my launcher up, fired into the canopy. Screams. American and otherwise. I don't remember how long the fight lasted. 10 minutes. Maybe 20. When it ended, the village was gone. Huts leveled. Orchard smoldering. And the kid, the boy I'd seen first, was lying face down in the ash. No one spoke. We just moved. Took dog tags from our own. Burned the rest. That night, Macklin gathered us under the cover of jungle. No one talks about this, he said. Not now. Not ever. You say it was ABC's stronghold. You say we took fire. That's the truth. Any other version? It gets you reassigned to the kind of duty no one comes back from. I looked at Coyle. He was shaking. The radio sat in his lap, blinking. A light on it I hadn't noticed before. Is it recording? I whispered. He shook his head. I disabled it. But years later, I found out he had it. That tape. That's what I tried to give the reporter. That's why the suits came. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because someone needs to know. Not the version in the reports. Not the citation I got. The truth. Operation Silent Orchard wasn't a raid. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And we were the delivery. T had been 48 hours since I sent the tape to the reporter. Since then, I hadn't left the house. I kept the blinds shut, the door locked, the safety off. The days passed like fog, thick, colorless, disjointed. I ate cold soup from the can. I watched the news. Nothing. No leaks. No mention. Just the usual noise. Elections, sports were somewhere else. But I knew better. The tape was real. I'd heard it again before I mailed it out. My voice, Macklin's. Commands, the sounds of the orchard burning, a boy screaming in the background. Truth etched into magnetic tape. Pulsing with the ghost of a past the Pentagon paid good money to forget. Then, around midnight, the knock came. 3 slow raps. Not loud. Not urgent. But deliberate. I grabbed the .38 from the drawer beside my recliner and approached the door slowly. My house sat at the edge of a pine break outside Terre Hut. No neighbors within shouting distance. If someone came out here, it wasn't for small talk. Who is it? I barked. A woman's voice. Calm. Young. My name's Eliza Grant. I'm with the free record, the reporter you sent the tape to. I opened the door to inches. Her ID badge was clipped to a navy windbreaker. She didn't look like a Fed. No sunglasses, no suit. Just tired eyes and a digital recorder in her hand. I came alone, she said. I listened to the tape. I believe you. I opened the door. Not wide, but enough. She stepped inside like someone used to moving quickly. Quietly. Her bag was worn. Her boots muddy. I poured coffee. She didn't ask for it, but she drank it. That recording is dangerous, I said. Not because of what it says, because of who knows it exists. I know, she whispered. That's why I didn't upload it. I didn't even bring a phone here. Just this. She held up the recorder. I nodded. They'll come anyway. She leaned forward. Mr. Halvorsen, Joseph, you're not the only one. I've interviewed other vets. Laos, Cambodia. Different units, same orders. Burn the orchard. Silence the village. No questions. I looked away. My throat was tight. You're the only one who had a tape, Elisa, I said. This won't end with an article. You run this story, you. Don't just take on the military. You take on ghost programs buried so deep. They burn the paper trail before it's typed. She nodded, then slid something across the table. A photograph. Black and white. Grainy. It showed men in camouflage. But not us. Another orchard. Another fire. The same look in their eyes, emptied out, barely human. Where did you get this? A woman in Da Nang. Her father was in the ARVN. He took it before he disappeared. She thinks it was the same operation, different year. I turned it over. Scribbled in the corner, Phoenix -1969, Project Phoenix. I muttered, Jesus Christ. She clicked her recorder on. Start from the beginning, she said. I looked out the window. The tree line swayed. No headlights. No drones. Not yet. And I began. They told us the orchard was storing weapons. But I didn't get far. Not before the power cut out. Not before the porch creaked. Not before a flashlight beam cut across my living room, and a voice called out, Mr. Halvorsen. Step outside. Now. Eliza froze. My heart kicked like it wanted. Out of my chest, I raised my gun and whispered, bathroom. Hide. Now. She vanished. I stepped toward the front door. Another voice now. Male. Calm. Practiced. You've been warned. I looked through the PEPHOLE. To men. Civilian clothes. Black gloves. Not cops. Not journalists. Clean dash up. I stepped back. Aimed. Waited. The door exploded inward. They came fast. One grabbed my wrist. I fired, missed. The other pinned me. Fist to my face, then black. When I came to, I was on the floor. Alone. My mouth tasted blood. Eliza was gone. So was the tape, but the photo was still there. Crumpled. Burned at the edges. They left it on purpose. A message. We can erase the tape. But you're next. And now I knew. The orchard hadn't stopped burning. It was spreading. And I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I awoke on the floor. My face swollen. Throat dry as dust. Every joint aching like a curse from another life. The pain was familiar, like waking up hungover after a bad op in Saigon. Only this time. The war had come to me. Elisa was gone. The recorder was gone. But the silence she left behind was the loudest thing I'd heard since '71. I washed the blood from my hands in the kitchen sink. And when I looked up, I saw my reflection in the cracked window pane. Gaunt, sunken eyes, a scar that hadn't faded. And behind me, always, the orchard. No tape, no backup. Just the photo, curled and half-burned, sitting where they'd left it. They hadn't taken it. They didn't need to. The message was clear. We'll erase everything. Even you. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I still had the other envelope, the one I hadn't mailed. A second tape. My contingency. Buried in a thermos in the backyard to feet under my father's fishing shed. I'd wrapped it in foil, sealed it twice. Cold War tricks for a hot-blooded reckoning. I dug it out before noon. My hands shook, not from age, but memory. As I pried the lid off and saw the cassette still dry, still intact, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't just an old man screaming at shadows anymore. I had proof again. But who could I trust? Elisa was gone. Maybe dead. Maybe flipped. Maybe worse. So I drove back into town, past the diner, past the school with the kids playing flag football on the lawn, past the statue of a soldier holding a rifle no one remembered how to use. I parked near the library, slipped into the public terminal room. No cameras here. Just dust and old magazines. I searched for a name. One I hadn't said out loud in 20 years. Ernest Mallory. He'd been our unit's field analyst. A spook, but not like the others. Quiet. Smart. He read too much. Took notes no one understood. After the orchard, he vanished. Rumor was he turned on the agency. Blew the whistle. Then disappeared off-grid in Idaho. I found a PO box registered under a shell name he used back then, C.J. Haskell. I copied the address. Wrote one line. You were right. It's still happening. And I mailed it with a copy of the second tape. Then I waited. 3 days. Nothing. On the 4th, a letter arrived. No return address, just a single sheet inside. I never left. Coordinates. Below. Come alone, a GPS string. Somewhere in the Sawtooth Range. So I packed up. 2 days later, I was on the road. Shotgun in the trunk. Burner phone in my glove box. Thermos hidden under the seat. The mountains loomed by sunset, tall as judgment. My lungs burned with every step toward the cabin he marked. He was there. Older. Gray. But still him. Eyes sharp. Same flannel shirt. Same look he had the day he told me. This isn't a war. It's a lab. We didn't speak much at first. He led me inside, pointed to a box of tapes. Hundreds. Maybe more. All of them? I asked. He nodded. I took what I could. Before they realized I wasn't loyal. What do we do now? He poured 2 cups of instant coffee. No sugar. Now, he said, we finished the orchard. I frowned. What do you mean? They didn't just destroy villages, they built them. Orchards planted to test containment, human containment, fear, confession, guilt, memory control. He opened a binder. Inside were schematics. A village. Built 3 times. Same design, different country. Cambodia. Laos, Northern California. The 3rd orchard, he said. It still exists. He tapped a red circle on a map. Black Pine Township. Population, 112. But 40 of them agency assets. Living test subjects. I stared. That's a town, no, he said. That's a bomb waiting to go off. We planned for a week. Mallory had contacts, rogue analyst, 1 hacker. 2 ex-civilian contractors from a drone project. They owed him favors. or feared him. Either way, we had eyes on the town by Thursday. Photos, footage, records, children born with enhanced recall, men who never slept, women who recited entire radio logs from the 70s. We're not just ghosts, Joe, Mallory whispered. We're prototypes. We geared up. Cameras, backups, redundancy plans. The night before we left, Mallory gave me a gun, just in case. He said, if they flip you, if they flip me. I didn't laugh. By dawn, we were outside Black Pine. I watched the houses through binoculars, kids on tricycles, flags waving, dogs barking. But something was off. Too perfect, too synchronized. Mallory pointed. That woman in the apron, same one from the footage 10 years ago. Not aged today. He turned to me. Joe, you sure you want to do this? I looked at the tape in my hand, and I nodded. Because whatever Operation Silent Orchard was then, had never ended. And if no one remembered, I would. The road to Black Pine twisted through dense pine forest and forgotten valleys, whining like a secret too old to be remembered. Fog rolled over the cracked pavement as if the land itself was reluctant to reveal what waited at the end. Mallory drove in silence. I sat beside him, clutching a weathered photograph of my squad. One of them had once smiled at me under a tree just like these. That smile never made it home. Population 112, Mallory muttered, eyes locked on the GPS, but that's just what they report. We pulled into town just past 6:30 a.m., parking behind a shuttered gas station with a faded Coca-Cola mural. I stepped out and took a deep breath. It smelled of pine needles, motor oil, and something sterile underneath like bleach. The main street looked like a postcard. American flags on every porch, lawns trimmed with ruler precision, not a single piece of trash in sight. This place is too clean, I said. Mallory nodded. Controlled environment, like a test chamber. We moved quietly down the sidewalk, dressed like lost hikers, carrying cameras disguised as binoculars. A man in overalls walked past us, early 40s, smiling. Morning, gents, he said. His eyes lingered on Mallory a beat too long. Morning. I answered. Once he was gone, Mallory whispered, that's Jacob Nolan, died in a fire in 97. Same face, no burn marks, same age. I shivered. We reached a small public library. Mallory led me to the back, where a Wi-Fi router blinked behind a locked door. He cracked the lock like he'd done it 100 times. This is their data node, he said. Watch the cameras. I'll patch in. On screen after screen, we saw the town's residents going through their morning rituals. Children biking in circles. Women in kitchens, stirring pots with identical movements. Every 30 seconds exactly, someone watered a plant. Mallory's fingers flew across the keys. Time loops, he whispered. They've trained them to live in patterns. And when the pattern breaks, he paused. They intervene. The screen glitched. A feed from what looked like a school basement flickered into view. A metal chair. Shackles. Blood on the tile. Jesus Christ, I muttered. Behavioral correction. Mallory said, this isn't just about memory. It's about obedience. We downloaded everything we could, encrypted 3 backups, and stuffed them into separate SD cards. One in my boot. One in Mallory's belt. One hidden in the cassette casing. By afternoon, we posed as journalists and visited the town hall. A woman with a beehive hairdo greeted us. Welcome to Black Pine, she said. Where old America still lives. Her badge read, Helen Fisher. She'd been on Mallory's list. We're working on a piece about patriotic communities, I said. Mind if we ask a few questions? Of course. We sat, she spoke, smiled, answered every question with practiced ease. But her hands trembled slightly when Mallory mentioned the orchard. I'm sorry, she said. We don't grow anything here but roses. We left the hall and walked toward the diner. She recognized the name, Mallory said. She's one of them, a handler. We barely made it inside before a black SUV screeched to a halt outside. 2 men stepped out. Black polos. Military boots. They made us, I whispered. Mallory gritted his teeth. Split. Meet at the reservoir. Midnight. We bolted out the back. The next 12 hours blurred. I hid in a church basement, surrounded by hymns and dust. Listened to footsteps echo above. Once, someone opened the door and stood silently at the top of the stairs. I didn't breathe. They left. When midnight came, I made it to the reservoir. Mallory wasn't there. Just his bag, a tape recorder, and a Polaroid of him tied to a chair, bruised. On the back, a message, come back alone, or he disappears like the rest. I stared at the water. And I knew. The orchard was never a place. It was a seed. And it had taken root in all of us. Mallory, bruised, bound, looking like he had already surrendered to the truth I wasn't ready to face. I replayed his voice in my head, split. Meet at the reservoir. Midnight. The plan had been simple. But nothing about Black Pine was simple, not anymore. I stood at the edge of the water, wind pulling at my jacket like fingers trying to turn me back. The tape recorder in my hand felt heavier than any rifle I ever carried. I pressed play. Mallory's voice crackled to life. If you're hearing this, they got me. Don't come back for me. Joseph, this goes deeper than Lazarus, the orchard. It's real, and it's not a place. It's a protocol. You were part of it before you even knew the name. My hands trembled. The tape continued. Fisher's not just a handler. She's a calibrator. They tune the survivors, keep them in sync. That's why your nightmares loop. That's why your memory stutters. You were calibrated, Joe. And they're afraid you'll remember the rest. Click. Silence. I looked up. Fog licked across the surface of the reservoir. Lights flickered across the water. A second SUV. The same cold black metal. I didn't run. I walked right into the beams of their headlights. They didn't cuff me, didn't blindfold me. Just opened the door like I was expected. Inside, silence. They drove me back through the streets of Black Pine, past the gas station, the diner, the town hall. All dark now. All asleep, or pretending to be. We pulled into a field behind the schoolhouse. There was a door there. Not a cellar door. A hatch. Military grade. Keypad access. One of them opened it, gestured. Down. The metal stairs led into a bunker. Old, but humming with fluorescent lights. The walls were covered in screens. Most were static. One showed Mallory. Still tied, breathing. Fisher waited. You should have stayed buried, she said. I didn't respond. She approached slowly. No fear. Just familiarity. Like a doctor checking a patient before surgery. You're not Joseph Carter anymore, she said. You're Subject 6 Alpha. You were never discharged. You were decommissioned. I remember Silent Orchard, I said. I remember the bodies, the fire. The girl, good, she said. Then you're almost ready. Something buzzed behind me. A door opened. 2 men wheeled in a machine. Medical. Wires. Syringes. Restraints. Fisher stepped closer. One more dose, just one. We can fix the loops. We can make the nightmares stop. Isn't that what you want? I looked at the screen. Mallory blinked once. Then again, a rhythm. Morse code. DELETETHERECORDS. They were stored here. That's why they brought me. I turned fast. Grabbed the tray. Smashed the machine. A needle sank into my own arm by accident. Didn't matter. Alarms blared. I dove into the next room. Found the server racks. Pulled Mallory's bag from under. A desk. The red cassette, still there, plugged it in. A prompt flashed, confirm delete. Orchard Archive slammed the key. Fisher screamed behind me. No. The lights flickered. Heat surged through the floor. I ran, back down the hallway. Past the chair. Mallory was gone. Only his blood remained. I crawled through a vent, punched out a rusted grate, hit the field, and kept running, behind me. The hatch erupted. Smoke. Fire. A plume into the sky. They built their orchard on rot, and now it burned. I don't know how long I walked. Days, maybe. I ended up in Kansas. Some farm town where no one asked questions. I worked at a feed store, slept in a trailer, ate canned beans and read the Bible without faith. One night, a letter arrived. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a photo. Mallory, alive. Smiling. And a note. They didn't get all of it. Let's finish what we started. Below it, a single word in black ink: seedling. They thought they'd planted obedience, but they underestimated the roots of guilt and vengeance.